Metroid Prime is easily one of the GameCube's best titles, not to mention one of the greatest sleeper hits in Metroid's repertoire. From being spurred by many hardcore fans back in the day for being too different from its 2D entries, to growing a cult following throughout the years that appreciated its new innovative design that actually mirrored the 2D games flawlessly, Prime has held a near untouchable spot in Nintendo's pantheon of games. Which you probably wouldn't know, because Nintendo rarely likes to redistribute games from the 6th console generation onwards. For the longest time, if you were ever curious about playing the game, you had two options, either buying the original GameCube release, buying the trilogy version for the Wii, which comes with Primes 1 and 2, or emulating it. And while the first two aren't bad options, you'd also have to at least own a Wii to get this plan off the ground. At which, if you didn't own one, don't trust the functioning power of someone else's near 2-decade-old console, or want to shell out the money necessary to buy the game, then you're left with no other option but to emulate it. This was a reality that I was unfortunately faced with, as 2 months ago when I cleaned up my room and placed my Wii U at the bottom of what can only be described as a console pit, I later got the urge to play Prime, but didn't feel like taking it out again just to be forced to clean everything back up. I ended up settling for replaying the game on Dolphin, which worked, but it didn't run flawlessly, dropping frames here and there and having a weird audio issue at save points where the sound would flare up out of nowhere, like the emulator was trying to give me an auditory jump scare. I know I can fix all of this by switching some things on or off, but the possibility of messing up the game even more kept me from tinkering around with Dolphin, and as a result, I ended up stopping my playthrough of Metroid Prime just past the midpoint because I couldn't take the issues anymore. Well, apparently my inner thoughts were loud enough for a couple businessmen in Japan to hear, as 2 months later, Metroid Prime Remastered was shadow dropped during a Nintendo Direct. I can't properly describe the sheer excitement I had when I saw this appear on screen, as next to the Ghost Trick announcement, this was the highlight of the whole Direct for me. Metroid Prime is back and had a brand new shiny coat of paint that made it look like the best Nintendo Switch game, which is funny because it's actually a GameCube game. Like, come on, modern day devs, you gotta step your game up. But when the excitement of it all faded and I waited for the game to appear on the eShop, I began wondering. Was Remastered's enhanced graphics going to do the art style of the game justice? Was I going to buy it if it cost over $30? And was I, Mr. Wait for a physical release, about to purchase a game digitally that I didn't even see be... I don't even know why I'm playing this bit up. You've seen the title of this video, it's a Metroid Prime Remastered review. Look, here's the deal. I like Prime a lot. It was one of the first Metroid games I'd ever played, and it holds a special place in my heart. So to me, spending $40 on it was not a tough decision. But to someone who's never touched the game before, is this remaster a good substitute for the past two versions at the asking price of $40? Well, that's the question I'm looking to answer today. So, strap in, cause we're diving right into a Metroid Prime Remastered review. So upon booting up Remastered, I had 4 primary concerns that I hoped the game would provide a sufficient answer for, being the graphics and how they'd affect the art style, controls, frame rate, and a definitive Prime experience where I can recommend you which game to purchase based on the value it provides. With that being said, let's get the most obvious one out of the way first. The graphics for Remastered are amazing. Being remade from the ground up, Remastered has taken all the original enemies, environments, and weapons and brought them into the modern day, cleaning up any imperfection the original had, all the while adding in a couple visual distinctions to either help players find their way, like these colored cracks in the Magmore caverns, or serve as a cool Easter egg like Samus's arm cannon smoking after repeated use. I think the biggest compliment I can give the graphics of Remastered is that it looks exactly like I remembered Samus looking when I saw Prime's commercial back in the day. The way her armor shines specifically in dimly lit elevators just gives me a weird nostalgic feeling, like after all these years, she finally looks like she should. Everything Remastered has gotten a new breath of life, making it all the more interesting to explore the world of Talon 4 and uncover its many secrets. But the most important thing Remastered's graphical improvements do is keep the exact same tone the original game had, and in some cases improves upon it wholesale. With the Metroid series as a whole lacking a lot of spoken dialogue, it relies heavily on environmental storytelling to get across the emotion it wants you to feel. I think the best example of this lies in the Frigate Orpheon, specifically the area where one of the parasites is blasted out of its containment field. In the trilogy version, it feels like a bit of the impact is missing, as while the parasite and busted up space pirates do help, the fire in the middle of the room is pretty middling and unimpressive, despite the fact that it actually affects the lighting for the entire room. Whereas in the remastered version, the fire is almost the centerpiece of the room as it threatens to eat the parasite, and thanks to much more harsher shadows, you'll notice it alongside the aforementioned busted up space pirates, which really sells the impact of the room and tells how badly damaged it is. Touches like this are something that makes Prime so much more appealing, as while the older versions didn't look bad by any stretch of the imagination, the game's graphics have aged a bit, so I am glad that for the foreseeable future, this is no longer an issue. Speaking of issues, it would certainly be one if this game had a variable frame rate, right? Thankfully it doesn't, as from beginning to end, Remastered runs at a smooth 60 frames per second, thank God. Needless to say, this concern sprouted up from my bad experience with Dolphin, but honestly, you can never tell if a game can hold a consistent frame rate until you get to end credits and see for yourself. And honestly, I'm really happy that I did this, as not only did the full playthrough serve as a perfect palate cleanser for my past mistakes, but I also just had a lot of fun barreling through Prime again for this and another video, so that's an automatic win in my book. However, it wasn't just a silky smooth experience that got me really happy to play Prime through to the end. It was also thanks to the new controls Remastered introduced that played a big part into that enjoyment as well. For those unaware, Prime has had a number of different control schemes throughout its lifespan thanks to it being on completely different hardware during its runtime, aka the Wii and GameCube. The GameCube controls are fine, however, it lacked the ability to walk around and aim your arm cannon, severely limiting the control you have, while the Trilogy version of course worked with motion controls, allowing you to move and aim, which got rid of Prime's biggest issue. And because of that, to a lot of folks, the Trilogy version became the definitive way to play the game. However, in Remastered, you do not have a definitive control scheme. Instead, and I cannot stress this next point out enough, you have options. Not only does Remastered come with brand new twin stick controls that work like a dream, but thanks to the Joy-Con's gyroscope, you can also have the precision of a Wii mode as well, recreating the Trilogy's control scheme flawlessly. But it's not over yet, as there's also a hybrid mode where you can have basic functions alongside gyroscope aiming. For as good as this control scheme sounds, I personally felt that this was a lot more stiff than the devs intended it to be, as with the aiming solely being relegated to the R button, it limits how much you can do in comparison to the last two methods. And finally, you have the original GameCube controls, which I don't even know why you'd play with them when I just told you that this game has twin stick and gyro aiming, but hey, to each his own. And with that, I only scratched the surface, as each controller option also comes with a ton of customizable paraphernalia, from being able to change what buttons do what, to controlling what direction Samus will move in when you tilt the analog stick. This feature right here is a lot if I'm being honest, and it's something that I like to see implement more in video games in general, as options are always nice, and sometimes the default controls in a game just ain't good enough to play them. Off the top of my head though, I can't really think of any games where the default controls feel off aside from Smash Bros and fighting games in general, which already comes with controller customizable options, so yeah, good job. As for what controller type I went with, personally, I couldn't get enough of twin sticks. After all these years of, funnily enough, playing everything but first-person shooters, the control scheme just got burned into my muscle memory, so when Remastered opened up with it, I was having a ball. Now, with twin sticks, there's an auto-lock system in play, just like with the GameCube controls, as you can aim precisely without the gyroscope, and for about 99% of the game, you don't need the added accuracy since enemies will be far away from you. But in that singular percentile of the time when multiple enemies manage to get up in your face, you can feel when the gyro aiming will be helpful. And thankfully, at any point in the game, even with twin stick controls, you can turn gyro aiming on. The caveat is that it'll only work when you're locked on, but it'll also give you the precision you need. Unfortunately, because this happens so rarely, my hands tended to rest on my lap when I played, so suddenly getting them into position was a bit of a pain for those percentile moments. So after a while, I opted to use stick controls and aim the arm cannon with the right analog stick. It was a bit slower and I missed a lot more than if I were to use gyro aiming, but in the end, it got the job done and I can keep my relaxed posture. So that's another win in my book. Maybe this part goes without saying, but I really like these new control options. Honestly, for the entire remaster package, they make the whole product worth it for me, as being able to tweak the game to my liking is just something that I can't get over. There's just a level of comfortability that I can get here that no other Prime game provides, and that's saying a lot because the Trilogy version's controls are pretty good. That just leaves me with one last talking point being the definitive Prime experience, and I don't think it's a contest as Remastered knocks it out of the ballpark and then some, as the game also includes bonus modes like concept art, character figures, and a soundtrack mode. Remastered has everything you could possibly want in a Prime game, except the fusion bonus suit, which is not in the game as of writing this for whatever reason. However, as I wrote that, I also thought, dang, I really wish I could play Prime 2 right now, which can affect the decision making for some people, so I'll say this. If you have a Wii and are willing to pay the price for it, the Trilogy version is the best bang for your buck, assuming that the other Prime games release on the eShop for $40 a piece. But if you want the best gameplay experience with a Prime game, get Remastered. This game is just too good to be passed up by anyone interested in starting Prime, or really anyone interested in a fun game to play. I swear I wasn't this giddy about Prime before Remastered came out, but now that it's here, I can't say enough good things about it. And I have a feeling that if you give it a shot, you'll be in a similar spot.